Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that grabbing a 25-pound sack of sodium chloride from your neighborhood market could land you in legal trouble. Sounds absurd, right? Yet proposed regulations scheduled for next year are zeroing in on common household supplies currently sitting in most American cupboards. Here's what makes this critical. These products aren't merely conveniences. They represent your safety net when store shelves stand empty. Stay with me as I walk you through 13 currently accessible items you need to secure immediately before they disappear or face legal restrictions. My name is David, and I've been studying emergency preparedness since 2014. These past 42 days, I've examined Department of Agriculture emergency communications, obtained copies of proposed legislation for the upcoming National Defense Authorization Act, and analyzed current supply network assessments from Federal Emergency Management. What I discovered is alarming. Major scarcities aren't approaching. They've already arrived. Within the previous 90 days alone, dehydrated dairy costs increased 38%, fuel restrictions affected 3 states, and large mineral purchases now trigger federal monitoring databases. Throughout this presentation, I'll reveal 13 preparation supplies legally available right now in 2025 that may become restricted or unavailable by 2026. These selections aren't arbitrary. Each one connects to pending legislation, economic indicators, and genuine shortage trends most Americans remain completely oblivious to. Trust me when I say item number 7 deserves special attention. It's already in your cooking area and approaching controlled substance status. Quick question before we continue. Have you observed supply shortages or unexpected cost increases where you live? Eggs, preserved foods, minerals? Leave your observations below. What you've noticed could help others recognize warning signs before opportunities vanish. Item 1. Fortified mineral seasoning. Currently, any shopper can enter virtually any supermarket and purchase a 26-ounce container of iodine-enriched seasoning mineral for under $2. That accessibility might evaporate by next year. Hidden within proposed defense spending legislation for 2026 sits an overlooked provision regarding strategic mineral oversight. This common mineral qualifies not merely as food flavoring, but as an iodine source, a mineral government officials classify as vital during national crises. What's the significance? During nuclear incidents or radiological dispersion events, radioactive iodine-131 releases into the atmosphere. Inhalation causes thyroid absorption, potentially triggering cancer, particularly in children. However, when your system already contains stable iodine, like the variety in fortified seasoning, it resists absorbing the radioactive form as effectively. That's why potassium iodide tablets exist. But what's significantly cheaper, more accessible, and already stored in your cabinet? Standard table mineral, provided it contains added iodine. Here's the complication. Not every mineral product contains iodine. Sea-harvested varieties typically don't. Kosher varieties almost never do. It's the plain refined variety in blue cylinders that contains fortification. And that's precisely what authorities are monitoring. The 2025 Department of Homeland Security Resource Allocation document even identifies iodine compounds as critical for civilian health countermeasures, which sounds benign until you understand that critical frequently translates to restricted for personal stockpiling. Already, bulk mineral transactions exceeding 50 pounds have activated monitoring systems in 3 states under recent emergency commerce regulations. With the Department of Agriculture documenting a 22% decline in domestic iodine manufacturing due to facility shutdowns in Texas, availability is contracting. You're not being paranoid by planning ahead, you're simply paying attention. Have mineral costs climbed or shelves emptied recently in your location? Leave a comment. I've received reports from viewers in Ohio and Arizona mentioning 5-pound packages vanishing quicker than normal. Item 2. Dehydrated dairy product. You likely associate powdered dairy with your grandmother's storage closet or wilderness excursions, but in 2025, it's quietly becoming among the most strategic nutrition items available, and possibly among the first facing restrictions next year. The reason? America's dairy sector is struggling. A devastating combination of feed scarcities, excessive heat in major dairy regions like California and Wisconsin, and climbing transportation expenses has reduced production. The Department of Agriculture recently documented a 40% drop in powdered dairy reserves, the lowest amount since 1995. Here's what most overlook. Powdered dairy isn't solely for beverages. It's a shelf-stable protein, calcium, and calorie source lasting years when properly stored. It appears in emergency provisions, educational nutrition programs, and supplemental food packages. When catastrophe strikes, whether hurricanes, infrastructure failures, or economic disruptions, government prioritizes these programs first. That means average consumers might face rationing or complete price exclusion. Costs have already jumped 38% since January 2025. In certain rural discount stores, shelves empty by midday. Behind closed doors, legislators are crafting language for the 2026 Farm Bill, permitting the Agriculture Secretary to temporarily restrict bulk consumer purchases of shelf-stable dairy during declared crises. That sounds bureaucratic, but essentially means attempting to purchase 10 containers simultaneously next year might require documentation or result in denial. The irony? Powdered dairy costs under $15 for a 25-serving container currently. During genuine crisis, it could exceed monetary value. Have you noticed powdered dairy vanishing from local retailers or watched prices double overnight? Comment below. Your regional intelligence helps everyone anticipate changes. Item 3. Preserved legumes in containers. Preserved legumes might appear as your shelf's most modest item, inexpensive, unexciting, possibly even laughable. But during actual emergencies, they're invaluable. Right now, in late 2025, something unusual is occurring. Legumes are leaving shelves faster than hygiene products did in 2020. Why? Because informed preparedness practitioners understand legumes provide 7 to 9 grams of protein per half-cup serving, survive 3 to 5 years in sealed containers, and require zero preparation. Simply open, consume, and persist. But here's the overlooked angle. America faces a perfect convergence in legume cultivation. Record flooding in North Dakota, the nation's leading dry legume producer, eliminated nearly 30% of the 2025 harvest. Simultaneously, rising steel expenses thanks to new import duties have increased container manufacturing costs. The cascade effect? Major brands quietly reduced package sizes while maintaining identical pricing, classic shrinkflation tactics. But it's progressing further. In September 2025, Federal Emergency Management added shelf-stable legumes to its National Emergency Nutrition Reserve catalog. That sounds beneficial until you realize once items receive Essential for Federal Response designation, they frequently become subject to allocation restrictions. Translation? During declared emergencies, bulk transactions could freeze, and retailers might receive orders diverting inventory to government facilities. Currently, you can still purchase a 24-container case for under $30. But if supply continues tightening, and with climate-influenced harvest failures becoming standard, that window is closing rapidly. Don't assume switching to dried legumes solves everything. Without dependable fuel or clean water for cooking, dried legumes become useless during power losses or evacuations. Preserved legumes, ready within seconds. Have you witnessed legume shelves emptying in your region or noticed smaller containers with elevated prices? Drop a comment, because what's happening at your grocery location today might be the advance warning everyone needs. Item 4. Large volume bottled water. You've heard water represents life, but in 2025, it's also becoming among America's most tightly regulated resources. Sure, you can still purchase individual bottles at convenience stores, but attempt loading multiple 5-gallon containers, the type feeding your dispensers or emergency reserves, and you might attract attention or worse. In California, New York, and Washington, recent anti-accumulation legislation enacted mid-2025 permits authorities restricting bulk water transactions during declared droughts, wildfires, or infrastructure emergencies. And those declarations, they're occurring more frequently. The trigger isn't merely scarcity, it's system collapse. In August 2025, a significant pipeline rupture in the Southwest left over 2 million residents under boil water mandates for 11 days. Retailers sold out within hours, yet under recent state regulations, anyone purchasing more than 2 5-gallon containers had to present ID and justify their household requirement. Sounds extreme until you can realize Federal Emergency Management's 2026 Resource Distribution Blueprint quietly lists portable water and containers exceeding 1 gallon as strategic reserve items subject to redistribution during national crises. That means next year, your well-intentioned stockpile could be reclassified as non-essential accumulation if government declares emergency. Unlike preserved food or grain, water has zero substitutes. You survive weeks without nutrition, but only 3 days without water. Currently, 5-gallon containers still cost around $8 to $12 each, and you can refill them affordably at grocery refill stations. But as municipal water infrastructure ages, over 240,000 water main ruptures occur annually in America, reliance on bottled backup is no longer paranoid. It's pragmatic. Have you been denied purchasing multiple water containers? Seen your local refill station close? Comment below, because when taps run dry, your experience might be the wake-up call someone else requires. Item 5. Small propane containers. That compact green 1-pound propane cylinder you pack for camping trips? It's about to become significantly harder and possibly illegal to accumulate after 2025. Currently, you can purchase a 4-pack at major retailers for under $20, but new environmental regulations quietly advancing through Congress could alter that by next year. The Environmental Protection Agency's 2025 Portable Fuel Emissions Framework proposes strict restrictions on civilian sales of small propane canisters, categorizing them as non-essential combustibles during air quality emergencies, which, thanks to intensifying wildfire seasons, now affect half the nation for weeks annually. But here's what truly makes this urgent. Propane isn't merely for outdoor cooking. During power failures, which affected a record 220 million Americans in 2024, those tiny cylinders power portable cooking equipment, heating devices, and even emergency water purifiers. Unlike electricity or piped gas, propane functions when everything else fails. Yet America already experiences supply strain. In July 2025, a major refinery incident in Louisiana reduced regional propane output by 18%, causing temporary shortages from Texas to Michigan. Even more concerning, the Department of Energy's 2026 Energy Security Draft includes language permitting government to temporarily suspend retail sales of portable fuel containers during declared energy crises. That's not prohibition yet, but it's the legal foundation. Once established, your stockpile of 20 canisters could be flagged as public safety hazard under new fire regulations being adopted in urban areas. Item 6. Sodium bicarbonate. You probably maintain a box of sodium bicarbonate in your refrigerator for odor elimination. Perhaps you use it for dental hygiene, baking, or drain cleaning. But during genuine emergencies, this $1 white powder becomes a multi-purpose survival tool. And that's precisely why it's quietly attracting federal agency attention in 2025. Sodium bicarbonate isn't merely a cooking ingredient. It neutralizes acids, addresses heartburn, cleanses wounds, filters water, and even assists removing radiation particles from skin. During the Fukushima catastrophe, Japanese households used it in decontamination rinses. In American hospitals, it's present on emergency carts for urgent cardiac care. That dual-purpose nature, household and medical, has placed it on the Department of Homeland Security's updated 2025 Suspicious Transaction Indicators list. What does that mean for you? If you purchase 10 boxes simultaneously, some major retailers now log it, not because you're doing anything wrong, but because automated systems flag bulk sodium bicarbonate as potential precursor activity. Sounds ridiculous, but it's real. In June 2025, a preparedness enthusiast in Oregon was questioned by local law enforcement after buying 50 pounds from a warehouse retailer. No charges filed, but his name entered a database. Meanwhile, supply is tightening. A key mining facility in Wyoming, source of 60% of American sodium bicarbonate, shut down for environmental compliance in August 2025, causing a 22% price spike in bulk orders. Here's the kicker. Unlike expensive survival equipment, sodium bicarbonate lasts indefinitely when kept dry. One 5-pound bag costs under $10 today, but could be worth its weight in precious metals during prolonged crisis. Have you seen sodium bicarbonate shelves empty or prices rise in your community? Or gotten strange reactions for buying multiple boxes? Share your experience in comments. Something as simple as sodium bicarbonate might be the quietest warning sign of what's approaching in 2026. Item 7. Dilute acetic acid solution. Don't let the modest price deceive you. Acetic acid solution is among the most underestimated survival resources in your kitchen, and in 2025, it's quietly becoming harder to locate in bulk, especially the plain clear type with 5% acetic acid concentration. Why? Because beyond salad dressings and pickling, acetic acid purifies water, disinfects injuries, preserves food without refrigeration, and even neutralizes certain chemical residues. In prolonged infrastructure-down scenarios, that $3 bottle becomes a medical and sanitation lifeline. But here's what most don't know. The supply network for distilled acetic acid is deteriorating rapidly. Over 70% of American production comes from just 3 Midwest fermentation facilities, and 2 temporarily shut down in summer 2025 due to corn ethanol shortages. Acetic acid is manufactured from fermented grain alcohol. The result? Wholesale costs jumped 31% in 6 months, and big retailers like warehouse clubs quietly limited purchases to 2 gallons per customer. Even more concerning, the Food and Drug Administration's 2025 Essential Household Chemicals Review classified acetic acid solutions exceeding 4% as dual-use substances due to their role in emergency water treatment and food safety. While not banned, that designation opens doors for emergency restrictions in 2026, similar to how rubbing alcohol was rationed during pandemic surges. Unlike fancy filters or purifiers, acetic acid requires no batteries, no training, and no expiration date if sealed. A gallon can preserve hundreds of pounds of vegetables through fermentation, keeping your household fed when the freezer fails. Yet walk into most stores today and you'd never suspect it's strategic. But talk to rural preparedness practitioners or off-grid homesteaders, and they'll confirm acetic acid is the silent champion of crisis resilience. Have you noticed shortages, price increases, or purchase restrictions at your local retailer? Maybe your preferred brand vanished from shelves. Drop a comment because your everyday observation might be the advance warning nobody's discussing yet. Item 8. Unprocessed honey in bulk. Honey isn't merely a sweetener, it's the only food on Earth that never spoils. Archaeologists have discovered edible 3,000-year-old honey in Egyptian burial sites. During genuine emergencies, that near-infinite shelf life makes raw, unprocessed honey a quiet powerhouse. It addresses burns, soothes coughs, stabilizes blood sugar, and even combats infection thanks to its natural hydrogen peroxide and low moisture content. But here's the unexpected twist in 2025. Honey is now on federal radar, not because it's dangerous, but because it's too valuable. A leaked internal document from the Department of Agriculture's Emergency Nutrition Division, dated September 2025, lists raw, unprocessed honey as a potential candidate for inclusion in the Strategic Medical Food Reserve in 2026. Translation: if nationwide health crisis hits, government could prioritize honey for hospitals and emergency feeding programs and restrict civilian bulk sales. That's not the only pressure point. American honey production has plummeted. Colony collapse disorder, pesticide exposure, and extreme weather have eliminated over 45% of managed bee colonies since 2020. In 2025 alone, domestic supply dropped 18%, forcing heavy reliance on imports now tangled in new customs screening regulations under the Food Security Act. The result? Prices for 5-pound containers of raw honey have surged over 60% in the past year. And don't be fooled by the golden syrup in bear-shaped bottles. That's often ultra-filtered, pasteurized, and mixed with corn syrup, useless for true emergency applications. What you want is thick, cloudy, raw honey in glass or food-grade containers, straight from local beekeepers or trusted bulk suppliers. Currently, it's still legal and available, but with every passing month, that window narrows. Have you noticed local honey vanish from farmers markets, or noticed your favorite brand doubling in cost? Share your story in comments, because when the system cracks, the oldest food on earth might be your household's secret weapon. Item 9. Instant caffeinated beverage. You might laugh, what's so urgent about instant caffeinated beverage? But ask anyone who's lived through genuine disaster, and they'll confirm morale matters. In weeks-long blackouts or economic shocks, that tiny jar of instant beverage isn't luxury, it's a psychological lifeline. More than that, it's lightweight, calorie-dense, shelf-stable for years, and needs only hot water, or even cold, to work. No grinding equipment, no whole beans, no power. Just instant normalcy in a world falling apart. But 2025 has been brutal for beverage lovers and preparedness practitioners alike. Record-breaking frost in Brazil, the world's largest producer, destroyed nearly 30% of the 2025 Arabica harvest. Simultaneously, shipping delays from Vietnam and Colombia have choked global supply. The result? Instant beverage prices in America have jumped over 70% since January. In some stores, generic brands are completely gone. Even more alarming, the Department of Agriculture quietly added shelf-stable caffeinated beverages to its 2025 Emergency Food Monitoring Catalog, citing civilian readiness and productivity during prolonged disruptions. That sounds benign until you realize it's the first step toward potential allocation controls in 2026. During past crises, governments have rationed essentials like sugar and flour. Caffeinated beverages? Not far behind. And don't think switching to whole beans solves it. Without electricity, grinding equipment, or working stove, whole beans are useless. Instant beverage works with boiled water from campfire or solar kettle. It's practical, it's portable, and currently, it's still legal to stockpile. But hurry! Retailers like warehouse clubs have already started limiting purchases to 2 containers per customer in high-demand regions like Florida and California. Have you seen instant beverage shelves empty or paid double what you did last year? Comment below, because your morning routine might be the warning sign for what's approaching next. Item 10. Portable fuel canisters. Those compact silver portable fuel canisters, the kind you insert into pocket lighters or portable stoves, might appear harmless, but in 2025, they're quietly becoming among the most regulated survival items in America. Currently, you can still purchase a 12-pack for around $25 at most camping retailers or online, but that easy access could vanish by 2026. Why? Because cities and states are implementing strict controls on portable fuel, especially after a spike in urban fire incidents linked to improper storage and indoor use during winter blackouts. California led the charge in early 2025, passing legislation which prohibits the sale of more than 2 portable fuel canisters per person during extreme fire danger or infrastructure emergency declarations, a status now covering over 120 days annually in parts of the state. New York and Oregon quickly followed with similar legislation. But the real alarm sounded in October 2025 when Draft Federal Energy Resilience and Safety Act of 2026 proposed classifying all portable hydrocarbon fuels as regulated emergency commodities. That means in a national crisis, government could freeze civilian sales, seize stockpiles, or require permits just to own them. Yet portable fuel remains among the most reliable off-grid fuel sources. Unlike propane, it works flawlessly in cold weather. Unlike wood or charcoal, it burns clean indoors with proper ventilation, critical during winter outages when hypothermia kills more people than hunger. A single 8-ounce canister can boil 20 liters of water or cook 10 meals. For shelter-in-place scenarios or evacuations, it's lightweight, portable, and indispensable. But here's the hidden problem. Supply is tightening. A major refinery in Louisiana shut down in August 2025 for safety upgrades, cutting national output by 15%. Simultaneously, shipping delays from Asia, where most disposable canisters are manufactured, have caused sporadic shortages from Texas to Maine. Currently, you can still stock up legally, but retailers have begun adding purchase warnings, and some local fire departments now log bulk buyers. Have you been denied purchase, seen shelves stripped bare, or noticed new warnings on packaging? Drop a comment, because when power goes out permanently, that compact silver can might be the difference between warmth and waiting in darkness. Item 11. Dried lentil products. Dried lentils are the ultimate preparedness practitioner's secret weapon. Inexpensive, packed with protein and fiber, and they cook faster than any other legume without soaking. But in 2025, this humble pantry staple faces its biggest threat in decades. Why? Because the Mississippi River Basin, the breadbasket for over 60% of American lentil and pulse crops, was hit by catastrophic flooding in spring 2025. Entire fields were submerged for weeks, eliminating nearly half the domestic harvest before it even sprouted. The Department of Agriculture confirmed in its October 2025 crop production report that lentil reserves are at a 20-year low. It gets worse. Global demand is soaring. Countries in the Middle East and South Asia, facing their own food crises, are buying American exports at record rates, driving wholesale prices up by 55% in just 9 months. Retailers are responding by shrinking bag sizes and quietly imposing household limits at warehouse clubs. But the real red flag comes from Washington. Buried in the Draft Farm Security Enhancement Act of 2026 is a clause giving the Agriculture Secretary emergency authority to restrict bulk retail sales of nutrient-dense, shelf-stable legumes during declared food supply emergencies. That includes lentils, split peas, and chickpeas. It hasn't been activated yet, but the legal framework is being constructed right now. And don't underestimate lentils' survival value. They cook in 20 minutes with minimal fuel, require no refrigeration, and provide critical iron and folate, nutrients that vanish fast in crisis diets heavy on preserved goods. One 5-pound bag costs under $12 today and can feed a household for weeks. Yet most people still see them as merely a soup ingredient. That's about to change. Already, preparedness practitioners in the Midwest are reporting empty shelves and price manipulation on bulk bins online. 25-pound bags that sold for $28 in 2024 now go for $45, and shipping delays are common. Have you noticed lentils disappearing from your grocery store? We're seeing sudden price jumps on bulk bins? Maybe your local cooperative started limiting purchases. Share your experience in comments, because when the food system stumbles, the smallest legume might hold the biggest lifeline. Item 12. Premium cooking oil in metal containers. You might consider cooking oil as a premium kitchen staple, but in genuine emergency, it's far more than that. It preserves food, treats dry skin, fuels oil lamps, and even works as mild antiseptic. But in 2025, sourcing authentic, long-lasting cooking oil is getting harder, and packaging matters more than you think. Plastic bottles, they degrade, leak, and can leach chemicals over time. Glass, heavy, and shatters during transport or earthquakes. That's why savvy preparedness practitioners are switching to premium cooking oil in metal containers, the same kind used by military and Mediterranean food banks for decades. Here's the problem. California, which produces nearly 90% of America's premium cooking oil, just suffered its worst harvest in history. A brutal combination of drought, record heat waves, and fruit fly infestations slashed yields by over 50% in 2025. Industry councils called it a catastrophic collapse. Prices have doubled since January, and major brands have quietly shifted to blended oils, watered down with cheaper alternatives, while keeping the premium label vague. Even scarier, federal regulators are now considering reclassifying pure premium cooking oil as strategic edible oil under its 2026 Food Security Directive. Why? Because unlike seed oils, it's stable, nutrient-rich, and doesn't go rancid quickly, making it ideal for long-term emergency rations. Once labeled strategic, bulk civilian purchases could be restricted during national shortages. And timing is critical. Premium cooking oil in metal containers has a 2 to 3 year shelf life, far longer than in plastic or glass thanks to airtight, light-proof sealing. A single gallon can preserve hundreds of meals through oil packing, a traditional method to store cheese, herbs, and even cooked meats without refrigeration. Currently, you can still find genuine premium cooking oil in 1 liter or gallon-size metal containers from various brands or online suppliers, but stock is thinning fast. Have you seen your favorite cooking oil vanish from shelves? Notice the price jump or switch to blends, or struggle to find it in metal packaging? Drop a comment below, because when the infrastructure fails and refrigeration dies, that golden oil might be the difference between eating and surviving. Item 13. Strike Anywhere matches. You've got lighters, you've got ferro rods, but when everything fails, batteries die, fuel runs out, fingers freeze, Strike Anywhere matches are the simplest, most reliable fire starter on the planet. No flint needed, no special surface. Just strike them on your boot, a rock, or even concrete, and you've got flame in seconds. That's why they've been standard issue in military survival kits for over 80 years. But in 2025, owning a bulk stash of these matches might soon land you on watch lists, or worse. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives quietly updated its fire safety monitoring guidelines in August 2025, flagging bulk purchases of Strike Anywhere matches as potential indicators of hazardous material accumulation. While not illegal yet, retailers now report sales of more than 10 boxes to state fire marshals in several states, including Colorado, Arizona, and Florida. Why the sudden scrutiny? 2 reasons. First, arson cases involving accelerants rose 23% in 2024 to 2025 during wildfire season, prompting lawmakers to tighten access to ignition sources. Second, and more quietly, the Department of Homeland Security included phosphorus-based ignition tools in its 2026 Controlled Civilian Combustibles draft list, citing dual-use risk in civil unrest or infrastructure sabotage scenarios. Don't let bureaucracy blind you to reality. In winter blackout or evacuation, fire isn't just comfort, it's survival. Boiling water, cooking food, signaling rescuers, staying warm. None of it happens without flame. Unlike lighters, which crack in cold, or batteries which die, a waterproof match tin lasts decades. Currently, you can still purchase 100-count boxes of genuine Strike Anywhere matches for under $8. But online sellers report increasing shipping restrictions, and some states now require identification for in-store purchases. Even more alarming, major manufacturers have slowed production due to chemical supply shortages. White phosphorus is tightly regulated, and shelf space is shrinking. Have you been asked for identification when buying matches, seen stores pull them from shelves, or noticed online listings vanish overnight? Comment below, because when the world goes dark, the smallest spark might be your last line of defense. Let's be crystal clear. None of these 13 items are illegal today, but the legislation, supply networks, and political climate are shifting fast. The defense spending draft, state-level accumulation bills, agricultural alerts, and emergency management frameworks all point to one uncomfortable truth. In 2026, stockpiling could be redefined as hoarding, and preparedness could be misunderstood as suspicious activity. And it's not about fear, it's about facts. The shortages are already here. The price increases are real. The legislative groundwork is being laid right now while most people are distracted by daily routines. But you're paying attention, and that gives you a narrow window between now and the end of 2025 to act while it's still legal, still affordable, and still possible. These 13 items aren't luxury gear. They're basics: minerals, legumes, water, matches, things your grandparents kept in their pantry without second thought. But in the fragile world of 2025 and 2026, they could mean the difference between resilience and reliance, between feeding your household and waiting in line for help that may never come. So don't wait for headlines to force your hand. By then, it'll be too late. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these 13 items have you already secured? Have you seen shortages, sudden price jumps, or purchase limits in your area? Drop a comment below. Your real-world observation could be the early warning that saves someone else's preparation. If this presentation opened your eyes, hit that like button. It tells the platform this information matters and helps get it in front of more people who need to see it. And subscribed, because every week I break down real research-backed survival strategies using 2025 data. Not hype, no fluff, no fear-mongering, just practical steps to stay ahead of the curve. Because when the rules change in 2026, you'll be glad you acted today.